then the real twist happens where you are actually able to drive for 7 minutes and know what's the content of three different articles you will never read, which is my magic moment.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. I'm your host, Jody Krangle, and this podcast will discuss just how sound influences our behavior. I generally talk about this in the context of advertising and marketing, but there are other places this is important too. I really feel that it plays a much more important role in our lives than maybe we realize. So let's delve a little deeper. This is the first part of my interview with Tal Florentin. For the last decade, my next guest has been one of the leading UX specialists in the Israeli market. He is a published author, speaker, winner of the UX Award, and founder of the Israeli UX Certification Program. After leading more than 160 UX design projects for Fortune 100 companies, it became clear to him that audio is going to be bigger than video. He founded Summurai, the world's first branded audio CMS, with the promise of helping busy people know more with less effort. Summurai allows companies to create branded audio channels, add branded audio content to their customer journeys, and promote audio marketing. His name is Tal Florentin, and you can find him at summurai.com. That's SUMMURAI.com. And if you're interested in another way to help people engage with your content, Tal is here to tell you that audio is it. Listen in to hear why. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Tal. I really appreciate your taking the time, and I know it's a little later there.
Yeah, it is, but I'm so excited to take part. So happy to be here.
Well, thanks. How are you doing over there? You're in Israel, right?
Right? I'm great. Personally, I think everything around us is less great these days, but we're handling.
Yeah, I guess we all have to just handle it. Hopefully this will be over soon. I don't know.
There
We can
is
hope.
some optimistic point of view.
Yes. Well, I'm hoping. I'd rather be optimistic. I wanted to ask you, and I know that you have a great program offering called Summurai, and we will definitely get into that. But I wanted to know how you got into the whole idea of audio being important, because I know that you've dealt with this a lot in your early career, and you're doing a lot of UX stuff right now, right?
Yeah, so my professional background comes from software engineering at the beginning. I've been around software engineering and programming and so forth for quite a while, and from there I moved into the world of user experience design. And over a bit more than a decade, I designed more than, I think, 160 digital products for various
Wow.
type of organizations, kind of the local Fortunate 100, dealing with a lot of cases where you basically have to find the optimal meeting point between human beings and technology. And I think when you're in charge of designing the interfaces of that amount of interactions between companies and their users, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what operates us and what motivates human beings and how technology can be used in order to optimize the meeting point. And I think one of the places where it hit me dramatically, both from my own perspective, which is something designers should never use because we're not the users, but both from my own experience and the experience I bumped into as a professional researcher and designer, is that we're kind of having a really hard time dealing with content. It's kind of growing endlessly, and we there are two elements for that. We both need to know more in a much wider type of information. So we used to be professionals by knowing something specific, I guess 3 decades ago or before that. And now we are professionals by knowing about a lot of things. So our knowledge is becoming wider. So this is one kind of movement, and the other element is that content is growing tremendously, much faster than what we can actually digest.
So true.
And from my philosophy, we actually we have an endless fight with content. So you either bump into an article, you look at it, and you say, I don't know. I would like to know what's written here, but I don't want to read, right? So I'm putting it. I leave the tab open for later or for never, right? Or alternatively, you send it to a reading list and never get back to that. So, or the worst case is that you actually have a clickbait title and you actually start reading it, and then you spend your time reading only to find out that you actually knew everything about that before. So you were actually wasting your time again. And from my point of view, I just realized that we are in an endless fight and we always lose. And
yeah.
from that point of view, I figured out that audio may have an alternative for that, which is kind of a promising thing to say. And I dived into trying to figure out how audio can actually improve that. And coming from the user experience side and being the person in charge of designing interfaces, visual interfaces, moving into audio is kind of not the thing you would expect.
Yeah.
But I think the
Might
reason
even be
for
a little
that,
scary.
yeah, it is. I'm actually kind of breaking my own. I'm not using the tools that I should be using as a professional
Sure. Yeah.
advisor. I'm saying no. A screen is a kind of an interface. A visual interface is not what you should put there. But I think when you look at a timeline, at a customer journey, which is an element we always use as designers, you actually find out that audio opens the door for so many additional interfaces which are not visual or not visual first, they're audio first. And it basically opens the doors to so many new ideas. And then you find out how uncharted this territory is.
Yeah, strangely. It's funny
And
that
it's
that's the
so
case, but
strange
yeah.
because you would imagine
Yeah.
that we're so progressing in doing things in the digital world, and then you find out that it's right until you put audio as your main area of focus.
So what did you discover as far as what we don't know about this?
So if I'll get directly to the end of what I discovered,
Uh-huh.
I think, and it's, it's changing on a daily basis. So you probably talk to me about that tomorrow. I'll say something completely different, but
We're all learning.
yeah, I'll learn.
We're still learning. Yeah.
So I think these are layers that kind of start to build up to something really huge. So first of all, one of the sentences I started saying lately is that I finally realized that audio is going to be bigger than video. And I have all of the reasons to say that. And I'm starting to see it happening, and it's kind of shocking because you would think that nothing can beat video, right?
So what are your reasonings?
So I think basically, if you look at the amount of time we have and how we try to optimize it, because all of us are trying to optimize our day, right? And you see how much of it is spent in front of digital interfaces. You see that it's limited, and usually when it is limited, it's optimized to what you try to do. So if you're in front of a desktop device, you basically try to work, right? So you try to be productive. And then you bump into the fact that if you would like to learn and get some more information about your profession or something else, being in front of a desktop would be a bad time to do that because you're trying to do something else. This is exactly where I leave the tab open and I go back to what I was focused on, trying to stay focused.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And then you look at the rest of the time and you find out that basically audio that doesn't have a starting or an ending point. It can basically be all over that time because it's secondary. It doesn't require you to stop everything you do. The other way around, it allows you to take badly used time, like washing your dishes, which doesn't take me anywhere besides the fact that I have to do that because nobody else does that. But then you say, okay, let's make this time worth more. And then audio is a
Mm-hmm.
great solution. So I think what I discovered is that until now, most of the focus around that was from podcasting, right? Podcast is already a thing everybody is aware of what it is, right? You kind of it's kind of like a video. Everybody knows what video is and what you can do with it. I guess we're not going to find anything dramatically new with what you can do with video in the next few years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you go to audio, and in my interactions with professionals, they say that audio is podcasting. And I'm saying, no, podcasting is just one method of using audio, but there are so many other options you didn't even think about. And now I
Mm-hmm.
put the idea of audio as a tool in the hands of companies that would like to communicate with their audience. And then we ask, okay, so what we can do with audio? And the answers are endless.
Yeah.
And then you try
So
to figure out
let's,
how come nobody does that. And
yeah,
you
it's
see
true.
that it's one of these points where you say nobody does that because nobody does that yet, right? And when they
Someone
all
has to start.
will start doing that, we will all
Yeah.
get there. But so you kind of figure out that this is a beginning of a new journey that nobody really stepped there before, which is kind of a crazy situation.
Yeah, it's really strange, especially considering how popular podcasting is right now, and it's only getting more popular. But I see what you mean by this, by audio being able to be in the background and you can still get information from it while you're doing other things. I think that's why people listen to podcasts as well, because it's filling in time when they could learn or be entertained while they're doing something else. So, yeah, there's a lot that goes into like how our human brain processes audio different from the visual. And that's a whole other scientific study that you've probably looked into.
Right. We always try to figure out how processing audio content is different and how to optimize the content and the narration and the tone of voice and the elements that basically build the user experience.
Are you looking for ways to improve your company's or podcast's impact? You'd be surprised how powerful the use of an intentional audio branding strategy can be. Want to know more? I have a free downloadable PDF that gives you my 5 tips for implementing an intentional audio strategy at voiceoversandvocals.com/audio-branding-strategy. That location does ask to put you on a mailing list, just to send you updates on when the new podcasts come out. But if you really don't want to give your email out, I understand. Just contact me directly. My email is all over my website, and I'll make sure you get that PDF without needing to sign up anywhere. If you do sign up, though, you also get access to a resources section called The Studio, where I have videos, white papers, and PDFs, discounts from my guests, and snippets of audio from my guests that no one else gets to hear. So maybe it's worth your while. Totally up to you. And of course, if you're looking for voiceovers, you can get in touch with me about that too. Now, back to the podcast. So do you find there are particular preferences in that area, like length of time of a bit of audio, what tone of voice, that kind of thing?
So I'll try to encapsulate everything we learned in kind of a quick way.
Sure.
So one of the things that we did when I started Summurai, we tried to kind of reduce the human element, right? Because it costs money. So we tried to work with text-to-speech mechanisms, and I did quite a wide research to find the best text-to-speech mechanism out there. And our content is basically aimed to be very short, where we're aiming at a short audio format, which is another thing we'll have to talk about for a second.
Yeah.
Something around 3 minutes, which is our optimal way of actually taking some kind of an existing piece of content, an article or something that exists out there, and create an effective summary of that, which will give you the main points of what's in there
Okay.
in a very
And that's how
short
you
and
came up
focused.
with
Summurai, right? Like that's just because we're already there. So I'm wondering, like, the name of Summurai.
Yeah, so if we go there for a second, samurai is a mix
Yeah,
of samurai warriors, the Japanese traditional warriors, and a
sure.
samurai. And
Okay.
the philosophy behind samurai is that we would like to actually do what samurai warriors used to do 900 years ago, where they were basically guarding the assets of their landlords. So our landlords today would be the target audience of a brand,
Mm-hmm.
and the assets wouldn't be the physical ones; it would be the time. And what our samurai warriors are trying to do is kind of take the content out there and use the samurai sword in order to cut away bad content, the content which is aimed for uh, search engines and not human
Mm-hmm.
beings, and take the good content, which is the effective one that's out there, and digest it into what we call the sushi of content, which is a very bite-sized,
Okay.
small, very digestible pieces of content, which
I love that.
basically give you three options. One of them is to
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh my God, it's so good! I didn't actually read the full piece because it sucks." Right? This would be one option.
Mm-hmm.
The second option would be nice concept. Okay, I like it. I got it. There's no reason for me to read the full thing because I got it. And
Mm-hmm.
the last option would be, wow, this is really interesting. Let me mark it up and get back to that later, which basically gives you the option to mark it, but knowing that you'll never get back to that later. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
like the save button on Facebook where nobody really goes there afterwards, right?
Well, at least the amount of things that you're saving is a lot smaller.
But we have a need to save things as human beings. We like
Yeah.
to collect things and not do anything with them later on. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to actually give an ability to do that, even though I know that you're not going to do anything with that later on.
Yeah,
But you
for
know
me,
it's
it's
out there.
bookmarks.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't help it.
So basically, this is the philosophy of the item we created. We gave a name to that. It's called a SAMI. It's a 3-minute summary of
Mm-hmm.
content.
Okay,
And
you
if I
said
go back
Summy,
to,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
so if I go back to what we learned about that, so we started creating summaries by somebody actually writing a summary,
Okay.
reading the full piece and summarizing it into a summary, and then we gave it to the text to speech mechanism to read it out loud, and then people who were listening to that on the go were saying that they are not able to digest what they just heard. So basically, the brain shuts down when it listens to something which is not natural, and we have an
Okay.
amazing way to identify when it's almost natural, but
Mm-hmm.
not really. So then we it was one of the hardest decisions I had as the person leading the company to actually say goodbye to text to speech and actually create a full element which will allow voice actors to step in to the process and of course pay them and hire them and train them and so forth.
It's a big process. Yeah.
And at the end, it was kind of a very exciting day. We actually launched a new version where human beings are doing the uh, narration.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the two first people who were listening to that said, "Wow, your text to speech is amazing,"
So they
which
thought it was
was
still text to speech.
one of the most shocking situations where you say, I can't believe it. I worked that hard and they still think that it's text to speech. Why did I do that? So let's go back to not paying anybody and having that because we already had that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had a conversation with one of the actors, voice actors, and I was trying to say, they still think you're a robot. Let's do something with that. Try to
Mm-hmm.
talk in a very natural tone. So after trying to do that, at one point he started to shout at me and he said, there's no way I can narrate that content and sound like a friendly conversation. I never talk to people like that. So
Yes. Yeah.
at that point we found out that a classic text which is aimed for reading cannot be narrated in a friendly manner. So
That's a good
uh,
point. Yeah. If you want
that
it to
moved
be
us
spoken.
into rethinking what audio content is because it added another layer, which is editing the content for voice acting, which is something
Sure.
I didn't bring to the table, and I didn't know that's out there because I didn't come from professional voice processing, and when we started doing that, we started to see the outcome of actually people who are aware of what they listen to without investing any effort in that. And another element which is not trivial there is moving into their mother tongue, which is a super critical element when it's your secondary content. In Israel, we speak Hebrew. And I think one of the things that are kind of hard to understand is that since most of the professional content comes in English, the professional environment is very English oriented. We speak English, we write in English in our companies, we communicate. I have a funny story where I sit in the table with a colleague. He's 2 meters from me, and I'm sending an email in English saying, "Would you like to come to a coffee break?" And then we both get up and go to the kitchen, and we just communicated in uh, in a different language, which is kind of strange. So English is very day to day thing here in the professional arena, and then you find out that even though I thought that my English is good enough, you find out that it's not good enough to be listened to as a secondary content. And the real change happens when we move to our mother tongue, and when we translate the content into Hebrew, and then magic happens. So then the real twist happens where you are actually able to drive for 7 minutes and know what's the content of 3 different articles you will never read, which is my magic moment.
So it's a familiarity thing. It has a lot to do with familiarity then.
I think it's both familiarity and the fact that your second language will never be as good as your first one.
Sure, yeah. You're not as comfortable with it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting.
So then when you take professional content, which is our new uncharted territory, you come to a marketer or the digital manager or the content manager in a company, and you take their existing content. You say, okay, so we have this ebook or PDF document or white paper, blog, you name it, whatever content you have, instructions on how to use something. And then you put them in the machine of actually take this and get back with a short playlist of short items of SAMIs, which I am able to listen to. Then you find out that you have a new type of content, which is super interesting to explore, because you usually start with the classic instructions, which are boring, and then you end up with storytelling about something. So I'll give you an example. We just worked with the local LG distributor on creating a playlist. We're talking about audio. It's not podcasting. It's not for fun. It's we basically created a training kit, audio-based training kit, which is for the sales representatives around the country who are in charge of selling the new LG device, smartphone. So we took the original information from the LG website and content, a video, which is very professionally made and inspiring, but it's very visual. So you don't get a lot of information from it.
Well, you have to be paying attention to it fully, right?
And the second thing was the documentation, which nobody ever read, right? So just to give you a hint, we bumped into an element called the new LG smartphone supports some kind of a manufacturing standard called IP68.
Okay.
So I can say it and you'll say, okay, and nobody cares about that, right? I don't know what it is.
What does it do? What does it mean? Yeah.
So now comes storytelling and audio. So we were basically trying to figure out what IP68 means. So we went online and tried to read about that, and we found out that it's kind of some kind of a physical attribute of very strong devices, and it's a U.S. Army standard.
Oh, okay. So encryption, you mean, or?
No, it's a physical element of being
Oh,
a
okay.
robust element when you can put it in dust and water and it will
Oh,
still
okay. So it's
remain.
rugged. Okay.
So we try to find the right way to tell about that. So we
Mm-hmm.
said that basically the smartphone can be is very robust, and it's a U.S. Army standard, and you don't want to mess with U.S. Soldiers trying to hit you.
No.
So we ended with having something which is very easy to listen to,
Hmm.
and then to kind of get into your arsenal of storytelling when you bump into a customer and you want to tell them how strong this device is, right? You have a good story to use. So
That's a
so
good
this was
point.
the process, and while listening to that, now I know that you'll actually remember that, right? Because you can't forget it
Yeah.
because it's good enough. It kind of passes it moves from boring information into a story.
Well,
So
yeah, stories are how we do everything, right? That's how we remember everything.
so now let me be dramatic and tell you that think about all of the marketing content you pump into out there and
Hmm.
think about the idea of turning that into audio storytelling and then putting it in the right place in the timeline of your customer audience without asking them to stop everything they do.
Yeah.
So this is the big potential of where audio can be used. And amazingly, it's not there yet. So
Yeah, it's strange that that's the case. We've had this for so long now. I mean,
I
but
think there's
as
another element I should mention,
hmm
which I bump into, and I find pretty interesting. In most cases, when you say audio, people try to think what's new with audio, right? It's so old, and when I try to kind of explain to myself why do they don't they get,
hmm
I bumped into the fact that if you look at history, you see that radio came before TV, right?
yeah,
So we actually have something kind of inside our mindset saying that audio is old and video is new. So when you move into the world of digital interfaces, you would say that, okay, so we already have video. Why are you returning me back in time? And the
hmm
reason why we're moving forward to audio is not because of technology, which is super interesting because most of the places where we moved forward were due to technology enablement, right? Things that weren't available before and now they are.
sure.
And audio basically moves us out of technology just because we can't have any more time with it. So it opens a new door, which is it's a strange thing to understand because it's not technology that moves us forward. It's the fact that we have too much of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So we have
And
to adapt to how we learn based on the complete overflow and overwhelming of the digital stuff that we have in front of us right now.
so there is
So,
a nice place where you understand that when you bump into the content while working, that you don't
mhm,
have to do anything with it right now because it's not the right time. You have your traffic jam later on, and this would be the perfect time for that. So move
yeah.
all of this content to the other type of place in your timeline, and then your basically your quality of life is improving, right? Because you don't have these dilemmas anymore, which is kind of a
Yeah.
promising concept.
This has been part one of our interview. I hope you'll tune in next week for part two. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available on all the usual outlets. Until next time.